time for an interview. It's time to get all your questions answered. You've always wanted to know, what does an NFL beast think about before he beasts it? Before he beasts his people, before he beasts the beast. What does he think? We've got 5-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro wide receiver of the Carolina Panthers, the all-time Panthers leader in total touchdowns, receptions, receiving yards, the NFL's active leader in all-purpose yards. He and his wife Angie are delightful people, the founders of the Steve Smith Family Foundation, dedicated to providing hope and inspiration to those in need, and good friends of the Furtick family and members in good standing of Elevation Church. What's going on, Steve Smith?
You can't follow that up. You can't freeze
the queen.
Huh?
You heard about this, huh?
Yeah, I've been listening.
Did you get our t-shirts printed yet?
No, I haven't. Everything's shut down. It's snowing.
Shut down. And no t-shirt vendors open today.
No. T-shirt vendors and grocery stores closed.
All closed. Hey, do you know the Chatterbox? Have you ever met him?
No.
Does he ever talk to you? Like that voice, the Chatterbox?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you know, that voice inside of our hearts and our heads, I think, which gives us great inspiration, gives us compliments at times that we need it, but also it tricks us a lot of the time.
So you think it's like the same voice, the voice that encourages us, that often turns on us, or do you think it's more like our spiritual enemy tries to take the truth and distort it, take things that are meant to be encouraging and distort it? How do you look at that?
Well, I mean, I look at it where I truly believe that God speaks to us. I think he puts things in our hearts that we are so we are incapable of really doing ourselves. He's so much more knowledgeable of us than we are of ourselves. And I think one of the things we do when we take the switch off or take the wheel and try to drive ourselves, I think that's when that discouragement, I think that's when that doubt, when we doubt the God-given ability inside of ourselves, I think that's when we self-destruct from the inside out.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I got the chance to interview you in church a few weeks ago. It was awesome. People enjoyed it. I love getting to hear inside the mind of an NFL player. Lisa was wanting to ask you a question. She's been with me all day, and she's trying to figure some things out. She needs some guidance. So, Lisa, you're right in the middle of it. I want you to keep going. Lisa and Larry were having a conversation.
Hi, Steve. Lisa Turkhurst here.
Hello. How you doing?
I am doing good. And it's going to become apparent to you really quickly about what an expert I am in the sports, okay?
Yeah, I heard you have great knowledge.
I do. And so, okay. So there was a guy. His name is Richard. I already forgot his last name.
Sherman.
And he recently was playing a game with the Seattle Seahawks, and I don't know if it was a playoff game. It was football.
Okay.
It was football. I even know that. Wait a minute now.
Yes.
Okay,
this is getting good.
He was playing the football, and I don't know if it was the Super Bowl or if it was like a playoff game.
Okay.
But he something happened on the field, and he came off the field, and that girl, Erin,
Andrews?
Yes. She was on Dancing with the Stars, right? And so
I'm not sure.
She went to ask him something, and he just freaked out in his interview.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I would love to lie and say no, because that would make everything more interesting, but yeah, I do. I actually do.
No, I'm glad you know. So, what was he so upset about?
I don't think he was upset. I think, it was gamesmanship. There was a little bit of frustration. Those two guys, he's a cornerback. He was playing wide receiver. They actually were at a charity event the summer before in Arizona, and things got hot and heavy. Testosterone bumped up against each other back in the summer. and then they bumped up against each other in the game, and then he made one of the winning plays. So it was just kind of he just rubbed it in the face and got a little ecstatic, had snot running down his nose. I mean, it was a typical into the heat of battle interviews.
Okay, so then he goes back to the locker room, and
Correct.
he quickly discerns that maybe people didn't like that interview or whatever.
Yep.
And so is he dealing with the chatterbox, or has he kind of risen above it and whatever?
Well, I think one of the things that was interesting is he had to deal with a lot of things, which was, one of the things I do believe that people that's in that chatterbox is, when we become athletes, a lot of people discredit intelligence with athletics.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes in the heat of battle, people say things. And so people automatically jump on uneducated, unintelligent, just say demonstrative and mean things and said some off-color things about him. Said that he was a thug and unintelligent. And this is a guy who graduated from Stanford.
Right.
And so, he had to deal with that. But then, you also play into that mind of you really start to believe that you have to fight every battle. You have to show people what you're capable of doing, what you're not, because the internet and technology does a great thing for us when we want to show people things, but then it also gives people that ability to hide behind a computer and say things that ultimately, when we read them, it imprints in our mind, and then we walk around fighting those things, and that may not even be what that person said, but that's the last thing you saw or heard, and so that plays in your mind.
Okay, so I want to use football as a metaphor. Something you told me about a lot of times is the amount of mind game oriented battles that you have to fight on the field. I want to hear from you as a Christian, as a father, but also as one of the greatest players in the game. What do you think are the analogies, the metaphors, the similarities between what it takes to go out on the football field, deal with the amount of chatter from other opponents that you have to deal with, as well as from media, as well as within yourself, and what that looks like in your walk with Christ? Do you think it's an analogy? Do you find a lot of similarities? Do you find a lot of differences? Talk to me about that.
Well, I've used myself, for example, instead of, a lot of people try to, let's just grab somebody. Let's, use yourself, be transparent. Well, this year I'll be 35. And so one of the things that I hear a lot this year is, one, are you going to return? Are you going to continue to play? And then they'll say, don't you think you need some help? And, I'm not sure how long he could continue to play. And he's not as good as he used to be. He's not as good as he was when he was 28. Now he's going to be 35. And so you have all those things. And then you try to ignore them, and you try to act like it doesn't bother you. But then in your quiet time, when you're sitting around, you go, man, you get up and something pops, and you go, man, am I getting old? Am I able to do this? Can I really be as good as I think I am? Is my training really worth training? Because, I'm old anyway. I'm not gonna be able to continue to do this for the rest of my life. So you almost talk yourself out of preparing yourself to putting in the work of your job. Mm-hmm. And then, how does that go into as far as your relationship with Christ is? Well, I'm a sinner anyway, and I'm already can't live up to this standard, so why even try? And so you have all those things that you battle with, whether it's football or just living life, and you have to make the decision, which way do I want to go? Mm. Do I want to believe those things? That some of it may be true to a certain extent, but not to the point of where you should just say the heck with it and stop.
Yeah, I do believe that we have that choice, not just in a big global sense, but moment by moment in conversations, in our actions, not just in big games, not just when everything is on the line, but even when we're by ourselves, even when nobody else sees. We have the choice what voice we respond to. And early when I was working on the book, somebody told me, "Are you sure you want to write about voices? You sound kind of crazy talking about, I hear these voices. Yet I couldn't think of another way to say it that was more accurate. It's literally like there are two soundtracks going on at the same time inside of me. And one of them is hope, and one of them is progress, and one of them is potential, and one of them is you can do this, and one of this is you can make it. The next second, I'm not talking about 3 days later, the next second I can be drowning in doubt. The next second I could be drowning in discouragement.
Yep.
Maybe something sets me off, maybe nothing at all. Maybe it's just inside of me. I can't always even pinpoint where it's coming from. And for me, I lived a lot of my life, and I say I lived like it's over, but I still waste entirely too much time acting like I'm a prisoner to those thoughts. Like whatever thoughts, whatever emotions come to me, I just have to go with them. But to realize Christ has set me free means that I have a choice. Each time the thought comes, the emotion comes, I can't stop it from coming, but that doesn't mean I have to go along with it,
Yeah, I mean, in sports we call that self-talk. In sports psychology, they call that self-talk, negative talk, and positive reinforcement. And it's just, training your body, training your mind to really stop the thoughts that are negative, that hamper you, that really just control you to where you don't even believe what you've done so many times. I mean, we'll practice 2.5. I give you an example. In practice alone, the year before, one of my coaches told me they're going to minimize my reps. Last year in practice, I ran 1,000 routes just in practice. 1,000 routes. And an average of a practice, I run about 2.5 miles every day. We're not talking about any training. And so you have all those repetitions, all those miles you run, and you can get in the game just because the stage is there. There's people in the stands. There's a whole thing goes on before. Now, all of a sudden, sometimes you can discredit all those miles I've run, all those routes that I've run, because I doubt, am I good enough?
Even though all of the statistics, all of the facts are pointing toward your ability to do it, there's still
at least halfway
sabotage.
Good.
I absolutely relate. You and I both work on Sundays. That's one thing we have in common. And there've been a lot of times this year and last year that I was finishing preaching while you were getting ready to play. And we may text one another. And I realized one night when you came over and we were talking about the different challenges of being a parent, being a husband, and me being a minister, you being a player, but us both being Christians, followers of Christ. And we were talking about how much more we need encouragement than people might think. And I was realizing that every Sunday after I preach, I can pretty much count on a text from you about the sermon. And then I was thinking of how even if the game doesn't go well, it's always so important to me that I speak something that's going to lift you up, and we do that for one another. But I don't think we realize how discouraged people are, even people that seem very successful to us, that seem to us like they're beyond discouragement. That's why I like talking to you about this, because there's a certain amount of, I've said this already once on the broadcast today, I say it in the book, and I've said it a lot because I believe it's true. We live in a highlight reel society, and the good highlights are typically enough to make anybody feel insecure when you're watching somebody else's highlight reel, because you saw the stuff on your cutting room floor. And I would just love to hear you talk. You're being so honest about the fact that, yes, I do doubt, yes, I do wonder, but I want to know, are there tricks, are there things you've learned over time that seem to work for you, where you can get that thought back before it runs away, before it paralyzes you? Because you may have had those thoughts, but you haven't let those thoughts shut you down. You've been in the league longer than most guys ever even think about being in the league. You found a way to beat it. So how does Steve Smith crash the Chatterbox? Not that general thing like just believe in God and, know that he has a plan for me, but I want to know how you practically shut it down when it starts.
Well, one, I examined myself. I looked at some things, some what I call durable hot spots, some areas in where it's consistently happening all the time. No matter I'm at work, at home, something will make me go, gosh, what did I say that? Or, man, back in, I can tell you right now, there's times where I have said something 7 years ago, and I can remember it. And if I allow myself, the shame will come and say, man, you were so stupid in saying that. And so what I've learned is I build daily goals, monthly goals, yearly goals, and long-term goals. And how I accomplish those long-term goals or those daily goals, I have like the example, not the example that other people that don't know me, that have no idea who I truly am, but goals like make sure that my family or my kids would be proud of me. Because especially I have a daughter, when she gives that look, so having some of those goals like that, being able to be positive, try to find something out of the day that reminds you of, look how great your life is. Mm-hmm. And when I say how great your life is, I'm not talking about materialistic. I'm talking about you have the ability at this moment to stand outside and look in the snow in Charlotte and go, man, at some point in my life prior to me becoming an adult, I remember when I was this age and I looked out at snow and my life was here and it was going wherever it was going. I love listening to the radio sometimes and listening to like old school music that when you were high school you stayed in your room and listened to.
Yeah.
And you used to fantasize about being an adult, where you're going to live and all that stuff. And then you listen to that music now and it brings you back. And it makes me I love where I live. And not where I live materialistic, but where I live right now, from where I came from, what I went through, where I am now, that I'm able to remember what I used to listen to, and I'm alive to listen to it now.
That's fantastic. I relate to that on so many levels.
Hey, Steve, this is Lisa one more time. I love what you said just a minute ago about running the routes. That's what you said. I want to make sure I get the term right? Run the routes?
Yep. Uh-huh.
So I love what you said because I think when we watch you play on the field, we don't ever see you running the routes. Like we don't ever see you putting in all that time practicing, but you get out on the field and you're effective because you have done some behind the scenes work. And I want to encourage you that I've seen something in you in your personal life. I see you, and it relates to crashing the Chatterbox because in your personal life, I see you running the routes. Like I see you at church. Like I see you making the effort. Even if you're on the road, you tune into the Elevation Network. I see you investing in your family. It's all that behind the scenes stuff. I get to see you do that. And I know your daughter and my daughter go to school together. And the way that you have invested in your daughter, she is a phenomenal young woman. And so I just say that to encourage you.
Oh, thank you.
In the face of Crash the Chatterbox, some of that chatter that you hear, Pastor Steven asked us today to make sure to reach out and encourage someone. And I want to encourage you that for every critic that ever says something negative to you, there are many of us who see you effectively running the routes in your personal life, and that is so inspiring to us.
Well, thank you. And one of the other ways I don't deal with the critics is you just quit. You just stop getting subscriptions. I don't get the Charlotte Observer anymore. Any of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just like I don't have to concern myself on what is being said or not being said, because I'm going to operate just like those articles are going to be written, good or bad, whether I look at them or not. So you just try not to pay attention and go out of your way to make sure that you can stay focused somehow
And I think that's the strategy you have to employ. You have to find a way to not feed those parts of you that become afraid. And sometimes we wonder why we're afraid. We wonder why we're insecure. Well, look at what you've been consuming. I'm not just talking about, what you've been reading in the paper, what you've been reading on Twitter, but what you've allowed your mind to dwell on. And I think it's a whole other challenge to defy the critic when the critic is inside of you. And, it's one thing for somebody else to say something about me and me say, well, that's not fair, or they don't know me, or maybe they're a little right, maybe that stings, maybe that hurts. But it's another thing for me to say it to me because I know me and I can use stuff against me that nobody else can. And I know weaknesses in me that nobody else knows. And so I think that's a real challenge that we've got to fight, not only as professionals, not only as people who go out and do something. You do it on the field, other people do it in different fields, but tell somebody right now, I know this might feel a little preachy, but tell somebody right now what's at stake if they don't learn how to push past these voices, these forces, these things. Like, what have you learned about the importance of this beyond just having a good career? Like, what do you think is at stake in learning how to fight these battles?
I think what's at stake is your true opportunity to grow, because I think we go through so many things, and if you're not prepared and ready, or even willing to push yourself, one of the biggest things is you have to have the willing task to be able to push yourself. It's one thing for somebody else to push you, but if you're not willing to push yourself, and what you'll find out is if you don't really put those things away and try to master those things, then you will find yourself alone and figuring out, and also playing the blame game. Sometimes saying, well, it's these people and not me. Mm-hmm. We all play a part in some way. You can't make a glass of lemonade for someone. Put sour lemons and Splenda in there, and then say it's the best lemonade around. And then when you give it to that person, they say, "Oh, it's not very good." You go, "Well, your taste buds are just off." Right. No, maybe it's the ingredients. Maybe it's something that you did or didn't do that contributed to that. And if you can find out where you have erred, then that will change your whole perspective of that individual.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I love it. And man, I just want to say to you, it's fun. It's been fun for me to get to see how you fight these battles. It's encouraged me to fight them more. And I'm excited for you. There's this whole thing that happens in someone's life when God blesses them, when God sustains them. Some people forget God in the process, and some people never forget who brought them there. And I just appreciate your stand for Christ and all the things he's done in your life. And, believe the best is yet to come. And I'm waiting for you to meet me on the tennis court so we can see whose skills have progressed, whose skills have deteriorated. But there's only one way to find out.
Well, I tell you what, if it wasn't snowing today.
Let's play in the snow. What a great idea.
Listen, if it wasn't snowing today, this guy who was supposed to come over and look, because I'm actually putting an all-purpose court in my backyard, and a tennis net was one of them. So we can play in the backyard.
This is fantastic news. This means that the rematch,
yes.
We're going to live stream the rematch.
Yes, please.
That means that it can be matches at and we're putting lights up, so we can, in case the summer is too hot for you, we can play at night.
Midnight.
When it cools down.
Midnight
under
madness.
the lights.
Midnight
under the
magic.
Lights.
Under the lights.
And I'll do the commentary.
Friday night lights. You can do the commentary.
I'll totally do the commentary.
You're invited.
Because I do the sports in an amazing way. Commentary is my gift.
We've been giving you a hard time about the sports today, but the fact is there's nobody more brilliant at being able to speak to these issues we're talking about than Lisa. And Steve, thanks for helping out today. I want you to, when you finish the book and everything, let me know how you think it is, because I know you always have an honest opinion.
Yeah.
And don't freeze the queen.
Don't freeze her.
That's your next book. Your book is Can't Freeze the Queen. I hope you get started on it right away. Love you, my friend.
I love you
Have
too.
a great
Thank
day.
you.
Stay safe.